Begin today the Gemara on Daf Yud Ches, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Yom. The Gemara here brought, this is from on the Mishnah here on Amud Aleph, Yud Ches Amud Aleph, where it speaks about the different things that are done with the carbon mincha. There's Yitzike, Blile, Psise, speaking about pouring the oil, mixing. It said in the Mishnah that it's not ma'akev, that it should be done by a kohen. So then the Gemara brought a braise where Rab Shimon says that the Yitzike, Blile, does have to be done by a kohen. The Gemara tried to reconcile that it's not an argument, but the Gemara concluded that there's a machlokes here between our Mishnah and Rab Shimon regarding these things, whether it has to be done by a kohen. And the point is that Rab Shimon says the mitzvah of kohuna starts from Yitzike and Blile, and the Tana of our Mishnah says that only from Kemitza. When you take the fistful to burn on the Mizbeach, that's where the mitzvah's kohuna begins. So the Gemara here will bring the sources for this, the machlokes and the pshat of the pasuk. So the Gemara, my time with the Rabbanon. What's Rabbanon's reason that the mitzvah of kohuna only starts from the Kemitza? On Makra, by the carbon mincha, the pasuk says, "V'yatzak aleh shemen," you pour the oil, v'nasan aleh levaina, and then you put the levaina. And then it says, "V'aviyah b'nei Aaron HaKohen," you bring the mincha to the kohen, and v'kamatz, and he takes the kemitza. So from this you see, "Mekemitza ve'elech mitzvahs kohona." From the kemitza forward, that's when the mitzvah of kohona begins. So limed al yitzike ublila shekshered bezar. So that teaches that the pouring of the oil and the mixing it could be done by anybody, not a kohen. Rab Shimon, the way Rab Shimon reads this pasuk is, he says when it says the words b'nei Aaron HaKohanim in the pasuk, mikra nidrash, we translate the words of the pasuk lefanov ula'achrav. B'nei Aaron HaKohanim goes on what it said before in the pasuk, and what it says afterwards in the pasuk. So in this pasuk it says v'yotzak and v'nosan, and then it says b'nei Aaron HaKohanim. It's going on the b'nei Aaron HaKohanim. They're the ones that do the yitzika and the blila. And when it says afterwards in the pasuk v'kamatz, it goes on la'achrav, that they're the ones that do the kemitza. Okay, so that's Rab Shimon's source. Frag the Gemara, but how could you say that this is the way Rab Shimon darshans a pasuk? And the Gemara brings another example where Rab Shimon darshans a pasuk differently. Frag the Gemara, v'sava Rab Shimon mikra nidrash l'fanav v'la'achrav. Does Rab Shimon hold that you darshan a pasuk this way, that the words in the middle of a pasuk go on what it says before and also on what it says after? But Vatanya, in the Braise we learned where the pasuk says by the carbon chatos, v'lokach hakohen midam hachatos. The kohen is taking from the blood of the chatos. So this is speaking about the kabbalah of the dam. That's what the v'lokach is. And then it says be'etzboi with his finger, and then it says v'nosan al karnas hamizbeach. He places it on the walls of the mizbeach. So how do we darshan this pasuk? Be'etzboi v'lokach. When it says the word be'etzboi, that goes on what it says before, v'lokach, that he takes, he receives the blood. Lamed, it's from here that this teaches me, shaloi tehei kabbalah ele biyamin, that when you receive the blood, it must be with the right hand. And the reason is, because we learn it out from what it says by the Mitzaira. The term over there, it says yumonis, etzboi ha-yumonis. So anytime it says in the Torah the word etzba, it means the right hand. So over here as well, the v'lokach, because it says be'etzboi on the v'lokach, it means the right hand. And then we also darshan this word be'etzboi to go on what it says afterwards. Be'etzboi v'nosan means v'lamet shlo tein esina ele biyamin, that the be'etzboi is written in the middle. So you darshan it on what it says before and also on what it says after. That the nosan, the placing the blood on the wall of the mizbeach, also has to be with the right hand. That's the chachamim. On Rab Shimon, on this Rab Shimon says v'chinemar yad b'kabbalah. Does it say yad that it has to be the right hand? Rashi here says that when the Gemara says the word yad, it means etzboi. The finger, does it say the word etzboi here, that it goes on the Kabbalah receiving the blood? Because according to Rab Shimon, the way you read the pasuk is, it says v'lokach hakohen midam hachatos, and then when it says be'etzboi, it only goes on what it says in the pasuk afterwards. Be'etzboi v'nosan al karnas hamizbeach. So he says hoya v'lei nema yad b'kabbalah. The word yad, or the fact that it's the right hand that we learn from this word be'etzboi, it does not refer to receiving the blood, because you don't receive the blood with your finger. You receive the blood holding the whole bowl in your hand. Right? So it doesn't say that it has to be with the right hand. So therefore, kibbul b'smoil kosher. If you receive the blood in the left hand, it'll be kosher. And the be'etzboi only goes on what it says afterwards, the v'nosan. You have to place it on the mizbeach with your right hand, with the finger of your right hand. So here we see that Rab Shimon in this pasuk is darshaning the word bet's boy, which is in the middle of this pasuk, to refer only to what it says afterwards, v'nosan. And I don't say that according to Rab Shimon we darshan the word on before and on after, like Rab Shimon said before. So Abai explains this. The argument here between the Tanakama and Rab Shimon is regarding the word bet's boy. Do I darshan it to be referring to what it says before and after, or only after? So how can we say here that Rab Shimon darshans in the pasuk by Bnei Aaron HaKohanim that it goes on the V'yotzak in the beginning of the pasuk and on the V'kamatz in the end of the pasuk? So Ella, therefore the Gemara says, Hainu time that Rab Shimon, the reason why by the carbon mincha, Rab Shimon says that we darshan the Bnei Aaron HaKohanim on before and on after is because V'heviyah. It says with the vav, V'heviyah vav meisef alin yerishin. That vav says that you have to add that what the pasuk is saying afterwards is adding to what it says before, and therefore it connects it. That just like what it says afterwards is speaking about an aveda that's done only by the kohanim, so too what it said before, it goes on the kohanim. It's adding to the point that it said before. That's how we know. But it's not, he doesn't say a rule that you darshan a pasuk l'fanav and la'achrav. You don't darshan l'fanav and la'achrav. But with the vav, you do darshan from before and after. Now Rashi clarifies here, if so, over here in the pasuk when it says v'lokach hakayim edamachatas bed's boy, and then it says v'nosan al karnas hamizbeach. Here it also says with a vav. So why can't we say that vav tells me to darshan that it goes on the before and after? So Rashi says that if it would say in the pasuk v'nosan al karnas hamizbeach be'etzboi, then I would say that the v'nosan where it says etzboi is adding to what it said before, v'lokach. But now that it says in the pasuk, v'lokach hakayim midam achatos, and then it writes that word be'etzboi right over there, and then v'nosan, so that be'etzboi is mafsik, it separates. That the be'etzboi is going on the v'nosan, because only the finger is what you use to place the blood on the wall of the mizbeach, and therefore I don't connect the vav of the v'nosan to what it says in the beginning of the pasuk, v'lokach, which is the Kabbalah of the dam. The Gemara continues and asks, Elamayata, now that you tell me that the vav is a indication that I have to connect what it says in this pasuk to what it says before, so Elamayata d'chsiv, this that the pasuk says, Shochat es ben habakar v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron HaKohanim es adam, yishech the carbon, and then it says v'hikrivu means the Kabbalah of the dam, receiving the blood, and then it says v'zarku, they sprayed the blood, es adam. So from this pasuk we learn out that mikabala ve'elech mitzvahs kohana, that only from receiving the blood is when it must be done by a kohen. So Malamed, this teaches al shchita sheksheira b'zar, that the shechting could be done by anybody, because in the beginning of the pasuk it just says v'shachat v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron, or that only the v'hikrivu, which is receiving the blood, that's from b'nei Aaron. But now the question is, Rab Shimon vav meisav alin yerishain. According to Rab Shimon, when it says with a vav, that means that what it's saying here is adding to before, and therefore before as well is the same halacha as this. If so, shchita hachanami bizar tei psula. Since it says v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron, so that should be connected to before, that shchita should be possible if it's done by someone that's not a kohen. Answers the Gemara, no, over here we don't dash in the vav this way, because shani hasam da makra, by the shchita in the pasuk it says, go back a pasuk before, it says v'samach es yada yal roish ha'olam. So who's the v'samach? That's not on a kohen, that's the owner of the carbon. Yisrael, whoever it may be, he does the smicha on the carbon, and then it says v'shachat, that he shechts. So therefore over there, that teaches me to compare these two. Ma smicha bezarim, just like the smicha is done by someone that's not a kohen, av shchita bezarim, the shchita is also by a zar. That's how I learn out to compare the shchita to the smicha, and not, therefore I do not compare and learn the shchita from the continuation where it says v'ikriv b'nei Aaron HaKohanim. They don't have to. They don't have to do the shchita, correct?
But smicha, that's...
The smicha is by the owner, right? So now the Gemara asks based on this, so if that's how you learn out shchita, comparing to smicha, so maybe we should compare all the way. If smicha must be done only by the owner, av shchita bebailem, so too the shchita should have to be done by the owner. So the Gemara no hahu lemotzes amres. To compare the shchita to the smicha, so far that you can't say. And there's a kal v'chomer for this. Because zrike the iker kapara. The zrike, the spraying of the blood, that's the main atonement of the carbon. Loi boy bailem, it does not have to be done by the owner himself. It can't be. By the zrike there, it's clear that it must be done only by a kohen, as the pasuk says. So shchita, the la iker kapara, the shchita which is not the main atonement of the carbon, loi kol shekain. Definitely, it doesn't require the owner to do the shchita. That's a kal v'chomer that teaches us that you can't say that shchita is required to be by the owner. So now the Gemara clarifies v'chi teime if you'll argue and say that this is not a good kal v'chomer because ein don in efsher mishei efsher. You can't learn out a case where there's a possibility to require the owner to do it from a case where it's impossible. This zrike could only be done by a kohen. So if the owner of the carbon is not a kohen, he can't do this zrike. By the shchita, it can be done by a zar. So maybe go a step further and say that it requires the owner as well. So the Gemara brings another source. There's a pasuk by the carbon on Yom Kippur that the Kohen Gadol brings. There it says that it's only there that the Kohen Gadol has to do the shechita, because it says v'shachat es parachatos asher loy, that he shechts the bull that is to him. So from it says here that he shechts the bull that he brings on this day on Yom Kippur miklal the shechita ba'amal loy bin b'ayla. It's from here that we learn that generally shechita does not require to have the owner to bring to do the shechita, that is. Okay, so Atkan, this is the conclusion of this inyan over here, Benigay, to what requires a kayan and what not. Okay, now the Gemara starts a new inyan, and the Gemara brings this here because it will connect to what it said in our Mishnah. The Mishnah listed a number of things regarding the carbon mincha that are not ma'akiv, that don't have to be done or be kosher even without it. Now, based on this rule that we'll see here that Rav says, it'll come back to explaining in our Mishnah why these things are not ma'akiv. Amar Rav, so Rav says as follows: the rule by Kotchim is Kol Makim Shenemat Torah v'Chukah. When the Torah uses both of these terminologies, the term Torah and the term Chukah, Einai Elo La'akiv. The Torah is telling me to tell you that these things are a must for the carbon to be accepted. Now, so the Gemara understands Kasal Kedaitoch. It thinks that Tar Tibi in order that it should be Ma'akiv, it has to say both of these terminologies, Torah and Chukah. And the example for this is like it says by the Paraduma, Zais Chukas HaTorah. Over there by the Paraduma, all the details that the pasuk speaks about are ma'akiv because of this term Chukas HaTorah. Okay, so the Simin, Natatz, Yakmal. These are 5 different cases, or more over here. You have 7 different cases that the Gemara is going to ask that l'chayre there it says in the Torah these terminologies and it's not ma'akiv. Or it is ma'akiv. Sorry, the Gemara is going to ask in these cases where there are things that are ma'akiv. Regarding the nazir, it only says in the pasuk the term Torah. And it doesn't say the term chukah there. But Rav says regarding the carbon Torah that tenufa benazir ma'akeves, the tenufa, that you have to wave the parts of the carbon of the nazir, that is ma'akiv. So why is it ma'akiv if it only says in the pasuk the term Torah? It only says Torah and it does not say chukah. So the Gemara answers, Shani Hassam, the nazir is different because kivin dechsiv kain yaseh. Besides the fact that it says Torah, it also says the words kain yaseh. This is what should be done. K'man dechsiv b'hu chukah dami. So that is just like it says the term of chukah. The next question, Hari Taida, by the carbon Taida like Siv Be'ela Taida, over there also it says the term of Zais Taidas Zevach Hashlamim Im Al Taida Yakrivenu, as Rashi here brings. So it only says the term Taida, Otran, and the Mishnah says regarding the carbon Taida that Arba Shebet Taida, or the Bach here adds Arba Minim Shebet Taida. There are 4 different kinds of breads that you bring by the carbon Taida. There's 40. There's 10 of them that are chametz, and Rashi brings here chalas, rekikin, revucha. The 40 different kinds of breads that are brought with the carbon taida, ma'akvin, ze'ezeh, they ma'akiv one another. If you bring only part of them, then the whole thing is not accepted. So why is this? If it only says the term taida. And so the Gemara shani taida, the iskish l'nazir. By the taida, there's a pasuk that says that we compare the taida to the nazir. The chsiv al zevach taidas shlamov. It's comparing this, the carbon taida, to shlomov. And what's shlomov? V'amamar shlomov l'rabes shami nazir. That is the shlomov, a unique shlomim refers to this, that we compare it to the carbon of a nazir, that regarding certain halachas, as Rashi brings, that there has to be like the nazir. So too over here regarding the breads, there has to be all the minim, and it's ma'akiv. If not, we learn it out from the nazar, just like we brought by the nazar that it says they're taira and it says ken yaseh. The same applies by the taira. Another question: v'harei mitzaira. By the mitzaira, the like sivbei ela taira. By the Mitzayra it says Zayis Taira Sam Mitzayra. It doesn't say the term Chukah. Utnan, and regarding the Mitzayra, that is, we learned Arba Minim Sheb Mitzayra, the 4 different things that are used by a Mitzayra, and this refers to, as Rashi brings here, the Eitzeres, Shnitelas, Ezoiv, Tziporim, that are the details that have to be brought by the Mitzayra. Ma'akvin Zezeh, they ma'akiv one another. Why is it ma'akiv if the Torah only says the term Torah? And says the Gemara Shani Yosam Kivin Dichsiv Zayis Tia Torah Samitzaira doesn't just say Tairas, but it says Zayis Tia. This is what it should be. Keman Dichsiv Be Chukadami. It's like it says the term Torah and the term Chukah. Like the Gemara, another case V'harei Yom Kippurim. By Yom Kippur the like Siv Be Ela Chukah. Over here it doesn't say the term Torah. Here it actually says only the term Chukah. And by the end of the Karbanis, by Yom Kippur, it says V'hoisa lachem l'chukah seilam b'chodesh hashvi, as Rashi here brings. So, if so, the question is V'harei Kippurim l'chukah utnan. It says in the Mishnah regarding Yom Kippur, Shnei Seirei Yom Kippurim ma'akvin zeh. The 2 goats that have to be brought, they're ma'akiv one another. Why are they ma'akiv? So, on this question by the Yom Kippur, the Gemara doesn't have an answer, and the Gemara has to switch the Havamina that we thought what Rav meant to say. That only if the Torah says Torah and Chukah. Now the Gemara says Ella, we're going to have to say what Rav is saying is Oy Torah, Oy Chukah. If it says any of these 2 terminologies, or Torah or Chukah, that is teaching me that the halachas of this carbon are ma'akiv. But now the Gemara asks the other way around. If so, v'harei shar karbonis, by many other karbonis, or by all other karbonis. T'chsiv b'hu Torah. The Pasuk writes the term Torah regarding all karbanis. It says in Parshas Sav, Zayis HaTorah, and it spells out all karbanis. So the term Torah, it says by everything. And there are many things that are not ma'akiv. Rashi brings by a osham, if you're not mak today, murim, it's kosher, and so on, other halachas that are not going to be ma'akiv. So how could you say that the word Torah means that it's ma'akiv? So the Gemara explains that Torah, the way we understand what Rav said is Torah boy chukah. If it only says the term Torah, that's not implying that it's ma'akiv, and it's going to have to say the word chukah as well. But the chukah loy boy Torah. If it says the term chukah, that alone is an indication that it's ma'akiv. You don't need the word Torah, like it is by Yom Kippur. So the Gemara asks, but that's not the word that Rav said. V'ha Torah chukah ka'ama. Rav's lashon was that if wherever it says Torah and chukah, not one or the other, not like you're saying now, that if it says chukah alone, it doesn't have to say Torah. So the Gemara explains, Hachika Amar. This is what Rav was saying. Afagav d'chsiv Torah. Even if it says Torah, yiksiva chukah in v'iloiloi. The reason Rav saying it in this expression is because regarding Torah, it's not enough if the Torah writes the word Torah, it also has to say the word chukah. That's why he said it in this lashon. But the other way around, once the Torah writes the term chukah, it does not have to say the word Torah. The halachas that the Torah says by those karbanis are going to be ma'akiv. So now we come back to the carbon mincha. Harei mincha, by the carbon mincha, d'chsiv ba chukah. The Torah writes by the carbon mincha the term chukah. The lashon of the pasuk by the mincha is kol zacha b'bnei Aaron yechlena. You should eat from the mincha chakaylam. So it says the word chak. V'amarav, and Rav says on this regarding the carbon mincha that not everything about the carbon mincha is ma'akiv. And the rule is as follows: kol makom shehichzer akasav b'teiras mincha. That if the Torah repeats this halacha about the mincha, then it's something which is ma'akiv. What does it mean, hechzer hakasav? The original place where the Torah writes the halachas of the carbon mincha is in Parshas Vayikra. And then in Parshas Tzav, it goes over again and it adds details to the halachas of a carbon mincha, but there are some things that are repeated. So those things that are repeated in Tzav, those things are ma'akiv. So what we see from this is, ainly hechzer in. If the Torah repeats it, it's ma'akiv. Lo hechzer loy. If the Torah does not repeat it, it's not ma'akiv. But the question is, why not? According to Rav's rule, since it says the term chukah, so that alone should be ma'akiv, regardless if it repeated it. And says the Gemara, no, Shani Hasam, the carbon mincha is different, even though it says the term chok, but the chi ksive chukah a'achil ksive. The Torah writes the word chukah in relation to this, that the kainim b'nei ara yichlena chokaylam, this that they have to eat. There it says the word chayk. This thing that Rav said, that wherever it says the word chukah, chok, that it's ma'akiv, that's if it says it regarding the aveda of the karbanis. But over here it's regarding the eating, so the word chok is not a proof that it's ma'akiv, and therefore Rav says it's only those things that the Torah repeated by the mincha. So now based on this, the Gemara asks, V'harei lechem aponim. So if so, by the lechem aponim, the chi ksiva chukah, a'achila ksiva. In the Torah it says, Rashi brings, V'achlu b'mokum kadosh, ki kodesh kadashim hu loy misha Hashem chokayla. So here it also says the term chok. But where does it say it? Regarding this, that the kainim eat from the lechem aponim. So achilik sive utnanim, regarding the lechem aponim, the Mishnah says that shnei starim ma'akvin zeh, the two sides of the shulchan with the 6 breads on one side and 6 on the other side, they're ma'akiv one another. If you don't have all 12, then that you can't eat from it. And shnei bezichin ma'akvin zeh, the two bezichin that have the lovain in it are also ma'akiv one another. Hasdarim va'bezichin ma'akvin zeh, the zdarim of the 12 breads of lechem aponim and the bezichin are also ma'akev one another. So everything has to be perfectly exactly how the Torah says. Why is this? If it's only the only place to learn it out from is from this term of chak olam, and chak olam is written regarding the eating. So why is it ma'akev? So the Gemara has charata from this last point, and it says that Elo, I can tell you as follows. That kol heicha dechsiva a'achile akol milsa ksiva. Even if it says the term chukah regarding the eating, it should apply to all the halachas of that carbon, and by lechem aponim it applies to all the details that it's going to be ma'akiv. So why by the carbon mincha do I not say so? And I've said only those things that the Torah repeated is going to be ma'akiv, because shani also by the carbon mincha is different. The Omakra, the pasuk says migirsa umishamna, that you take the kaimitz from girsa, which is the kind of flour, the way it's made, and the girsa is actually by barley, umishamna, and from the oil. So over here there's a diak in the lashon of the pasuk. Why does it say that you take the kaimitz migirsa umishamna? It could have said, or should have said, migeres umishemen, from the oil, from the flour and from the oil. Why does it say girsa umishamna? It's coming to tell you, this is the girsa that we have here in the Gemara, even though from Rashi it's mashma, you're not good as this, geres v'shemen ma'akvin, that only the amount, here we're talking about the shear. What's the amount that you have to have of the flour and the oil? That regarding the flour and the oil, the amount necessary, that's something which is ma'akiv. Girsa, shamna. It's adding that emphasis to say that this is ma'akiv, but vein davar ma'akiv. But something else is not ma'akiv. So here, the Torah wrote the word chok, but then on the other hand, it writes girsa and shamna. If chayk in this case by mincha would tell me that everything is ma'akiv, it wouldn't be necessary for the Torah to add this emphasis of girsa and shamna. The Torah is writing girsa and shamna to let you know that the amount of girsa and shamna is going to be ma'akiv. And what Rav said, the halachas that the Torah repeated in Vayikra and again in Sav, those things are ma'akiv, but other things are not going to be ma'akiv.
This is the special case where there's no
yeah,
kuka.
It's a different inyan. So now here the Gemara brings the rule that Rav said. Going back here to what Rav said, is a machlokes about this. So Guf Omar Rav, what was the rule that Rav said? Kol mokim shehechzer lacha kaseh b'teiris mincha. Only those things that the Torah repeated. It said it in Vayikra, repeats it in Sav. Then I say ein alakiv. The Torah is repeating it to say that these details are ma'akiv. Now Shmuel Omar, Shmuel says geres v'shemen ma'akvin ve'ein dava acha ma'akiv. The flour and the oil, this is what's a must for the mincha, but there's nothing else that's ma'akiv. So now the Mefarshim here explained, Taisa speaks about this as well, that when it says here in the Gemara, geres v'shemen, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing as before. Before when it brought up the geres and shemen, it's referring to the amount. When you're making the kaimitz, you have to have the right amount of flour and oil. Here, when it says geres v'shemen, it's referring to the actual the flour itself. The flour that had way it's ground to be geres. the flour that it is to be properly ground to be this kind of a flour, and the shemen that has to be. It's the something that the Torah repeats. As Rashi brings, it says it twice. It says salto, mishamna, girsa, mishamna. This is something that is ma'akiv. But anything else in the components of the mincha is not ma'akiv. Ein dava acha ma'akiv. So the Gemara asks, how could it be that Shmuel says this? Shmuel, according to Shmuel, the other things that the Torah repeats in Parshas Tzav, it's not going to be ma'akiv. That's a rule always by Kotchim. If the Torah repeats something, that means it's ma'akiv. So how's he arguing on Rav in this? Elos, the Gemara adds and clarifies as follows. If it's something that the Torah repeats again, Shmuel would definitely agree to Rav that it's something that is a must. But over here, the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel was regarding one specific case. What they're arguing about is, when the Torah, when it speaks about the taking of the kaimetz, the fistful, so one time the Torah uses the expression of moloi kumtzai, that it should be the size, the amount of flour that can fill your fist. And then another time the Torah says the word bekumtzai, with your, taking it with your fist. That's what they're arguing about. Now, so what does this mean? So as we see here in the Braisa, the Tanya, the Braisa says, one time the Torah said moloi kumtzai. Then the Torah says bekumtzai, with the actual hand of the fist, with the kaimetz. What this means is, why is the Torah saying it a second time? What is it clarifying by this? Shalayase mida l'kaimetz. That when you take the kaimetz, you can't make a keli that's the size of a person's fistful and just use a vessel instead of your actual hand to bring the flour into your palms. That's why the Torah is changing from miloi kumtzai to bikumtzai. Now, so here's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. How do we know this? That it must be dafka with your fist and not done with a fistful and not even with a keli. So Rav says, "Ha nami tana bikra," because regarding this, that it should be bikumtzai, even though l'chayr it says it only one time, but no, there is a second time where the Torah says this in Parshas Shmini. T'chsev vayakrev es hamincha vayamali kapay mimena. In Parshas Shmini, on the day when Aaron HaKohen brings all the special karbanis, on the day that the Shechina comes down, the first day when the Mishkan is built on a Chodesh Nisan, so it says that he filled his palm from the flour of the karban mincha. So here it says kapai, that's a repetition for the term bekumtzai, so it must be done dafke with the person's hand to bring it into his palm and not with a keli. Now Shmuel, it's regarding this case that Shmuel argued, because he says you have the other halachas that were written in Vayikra and repeated in Tzav. But over here, it's not repeated. It's said again in Parshas Shmini by the karbanis that Aaron HaKohen brought on that special day. So Shmuel says, Deirais Misha lo yalfina. I don't learn out a halacha regarding the regular karban mincha in every generation from this term kapai that it says on this day, Yom HaShmini Lamiluim, since this is unique, it was a Hiraz Shah, the way all the karbanis on that day, and that karban mincha, so you can't learn from there. This was the case that he was arguing about. Oh, so now on this point though, the Gemara asks, V'lo yalav Shmuel, Deiris Misha, does Shmuel not learn out the halachas of a karban that are for all generations, from a term that the Torah writes regarding a karban that was brought only then, for that time? But for Tanan, there's a Mishnah in Zvachim that says the following rule. Kli alach, the vessels in the Beis HaMikdash that were designated for liquids, whether it's the wine, the oil, or the bloods that they received, the blood of the karban in it, Makachin is alach. So they are able to be Makadish, they sanctify these liquids in them. Umidas yavesh, and then there were the vessels in the Beis HaMikdash that were used to measure the dry things that were placed in them. So Makachin is yavesh, they sanctify the dry things in them. The en kli alach Makachin is yavesh, the kalim that are meant for liquids will not sanctify what's dry, and v'lo midas yavesh Makachin is alach. And those measuring cups or vessels that are meant for dry things will not be Makadish, those things that are moist, are liquid. That's the Mishnah. Now, Shmuel, on this Shmuel said, Lo shanu, this halacha that the Mishnah says here, that when you have a vessel that's supposed to be for liquids, that it will not be Mekadesh, anything that's dry in it, Ela midos. That's only those kalim that were measuring cups, that were made ahin or isarain for the amount of flour, for the amount of wine or oil that was placed in them. Those midos, those measuring cups, will not be Mekadesh, flour, things that are dry in it. Aval, mizrakais, but the bowls that were not measuring cups, they were just bowls used to receive the blood when you shechter a carbon. Mekachin, they will be mekadesh, the flour that you place inside of it. And what's the source? He learns this out from something which is Shah, which was a place where the Torah speaks about a unique carbon brought for that time. The pasuk says by the karbanis of the Nesiim, Shneim Eleim Sailas, that they filled these mizrakais, they filled them with flour. And so, because what's the beginning of the pasuk there? Mishnei Meleim Soilus, it says Mizrak Echad Kesef. So this was the mizrak. These were these bowls that were used for the blood, and they were filled with the flowers. So you see that they're mekadesh the flour in it. So what's the Gemara's question? I see that Shmuel is learning out this halacha from the karbanis of the Nesiim, that were unique karbanis, that were Hayrah Shah for that time that they brought when they inaugurated the Mishkan. So how are we saying before that Shmuel argues on Rav regarding the halacha of the Kemitze, that it doesn't have to be done with the actual fist full of the Kayin, because it only says it by Shmini, which is a Hayrah Shah. And says the Gemara, not Shani Hasam. The fact that he learns it out from the karbanis of the Nesiim, that's different, because the Tana Beikra Teresa Zimnin, the Torah repeats this 12 times. And therefore that is an indication that we should compare and learn out from this for all other times. Taisva says that even though many times the Gemara has the rule that when the Torah repeats something twice, you can't learn out from something that it says twice. Here the Gemara says that it says it 12 times, we do learn out from this. So Mefarshim say, when the Torah writes the same halacha regarding two different kinds of karbanes, regarding two different kinds of dinim, and it's repeating the same point, then that means that it's only in those two places. Here it's talking about the same carbon of the Nasi, and it's repeating it 12 times. Here we learn out from this for all generations. Okay, now the Gemara comes back to another detail, another halacha regarding the carbon mincha. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah. Amalei Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav, both Rav Kahana and Rav Asi asked Rav on the rule that he said, that v'harei agosha, when it comes to bringing the flour of the mincha that's in the bowl, bringing it close to the walls of the Mizbeach. The Tana Bikra, it says this in the Torah twice. It says it once in Parshas Vayikra, and it says it again in Parshas Tzav. And V'loi Ma'akve, and it's not Ma'akiv. In our Mishnah, one of the things that it said that is not Ma'akiv in the Karban Mincha is the Hagosha. But why not? And the Gemara here brings Man Tana Bey. Where do we see that it says that in the Torah again? The Chsiv, because in Parshas Tzav it says Zois Torah Samincha Hakr Vaisa B'nei Aaron Lefnei Hashem. And this is in Parshas Tzav after it already said it once before. Hakr Vaisa B'nei Aaron Lefnei Hashem, as Rashi brings it. So why is it not Ma'akiv? Answers the Gemara. It's actually not a repetition. Because when it says it here a second time, it's coming to clarify the exact spot in the Mizbeach where you should bring the mincha close to. Because the Tanya, we learned in the Braisa about this, that there's a contradiction here in the Pasuk. Because it says, L'fnei Hashem, you should bring it to the place in the Mizbeach which is in front of Hashem. So if so, I would say, Yochel b'mayrev, that means that it's in the west of the Mizbeach, because the Mizbeach is positioned in the Azara, in the Mizrach, in front of the Heichal, which is further in the Ma'irav, as you see here in the picture that you have here in Rashi. Okay, so if you want to bring the carbon mincha and to the wall of the Mizbeach, L'fnei Hashem, that would be in the Ma'irav wall of the Mizbeach. But Talmud Lamed, there's another pasuk that it says, Al Pnei HaMizbeach, that you bring it to the front of the Mizbeach. What's the front of the Mizbeach? So, Al Pnei HaMizbeach, Yochel B'darim. So I would think the place where you bring the carbon mincha to the wall of the Mizbeach, is by the south wall of the Mizbeach. Talmud Lamed, L'fnei Hashem. So on the other hand, the pasuk says L'fnei Hashem. So Hakeitzad, what do? Magisha, Bekerem, Droimis, Maravis. You bring it to the corner of Droimis, Maravis, Keneged Chudish al Keren, right at the point of the corner, and Vidaya. And that's enough. The term Vidaya over here means that you don't have to actually touch it to the Mizbeach, you just have to bring it near the point of the corner. So like this, it's on the corner, so you have both Pnei HaMizbeach and L'fnei Hashem. So that's why we need this pasuk. It's not a repetition. It's teaching me the space, the spot that is in the Mizbeach where it's brought. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, regarding this, Rabbi Eliezer says that it's not a contradiction, and he explains differently. According to him, as we'll see here, the location of the Mizbeach in the Azara was further towards the north, and therefore you could fulfill it all by bringing it to the Darim. So he says, and I would think that you have to bring the carbon mincha to the ma'irav of where the corner is. And the Draima here, according to Rashi, actually, you take out the oi and you read it l'mayrav shel keren and l'draima shel keren, which means the Gemara is saying, Rabbi Eliezer is saying, I would think that you have to do both, since it says in the pasuk Pnei HaMizbeach and it says L'fnei Hashem. Maybe you should have to bring it both to the ma'irav and to the darim. So Omret, on this you say, no, it's not necessary, because when you see that there are two psukim that are saying something different, one pasuk is saying something that it fits with also another pasuk. Then another pasuk is Mekayim Atzmoim Mevatel Es Chavera. What it's saying is saying something, a point for itself, but it nullifies what it says in another pasuk. So what do? Manichin Es Mekayim Atzmoim Mevatel Chavera. So you don't interpret that pasuk that is Mevatels another pasuk. V'toifsin Es Mekayim Atzmoim Mekayim Chavera. And you take and you fulfill the pasuk that is explaining it in such a way that you could then understand what it says in this pasuk and also what it says in the other pasuk. Now, what does this mean? Applying it to our case. When the pasuk says, bring the carbon mincha in front of Hashem, that means in the ma'irav wall of the Mizbeach, that's right in front of the Heichal. If you're going to fulfill it this way, so then bitalta al pnei Mizbeach. Bidarim. So then you nullified what it says in the other pasuk, that you should bring the carbon mincha to the pnei Mizbeach, which is on the Darim side, because you're bringing it only in ma'irav. However, but when the pasuk says that bring the carbon mincha to the pnei mizbeach, which is bedarim on the south wall of the mizbeach, kiyamto lifnei Hashem, that fulfills also that you're bringing it lifnei Hashem. It goes together. How does it go together? According to what we said till now, the darim wall of the mizbeach is not lifnei Hashem. If you look here in the picture that you have in the Rashi, so the mizbeach is positioned closer to Dorim, and then it comes out that the south wall of the Mizbeach is not Lifnei Hashem. So the Gemara explains, how do you fulfill the Lifnei Hashem if you bring the carbon mincha to the south wall of the Mizbeach? Rashi explains, Kasava Hai Tana. This Tana, which is Rabbi Eliezer, his opinion is, Kule Mizbeach B'tzafin Koi. The entire Mizbeach was all on the tzafin of the Azara. So you have to pull over the whole Mizbeach towards tzafin, which means that the end of the wall, or the end of the south wall of the Mizbeach was at the border of the tzafin of the Azara, meaning that line between the tzafin and the darim of the Azara. We learned about this before. The opening of the heichal of the Beis Hamikdash was right in the middle. So if you go in the center of that opening, half was tzafin, half was darim. And the Mizbeach was all on tzafin, but it was exactly by the border, coming till the end of the tzafin side of the Azara. So it comes out that the wall, the ma'irav wall of the Mizbeach, was exactly Lifnei Hashem. You can bring it to, that means the darim wall, I meant to say. Yeah, the darim wall of the Mizbeach was exactly right across of the opening of Lifnei Hashem. So therefore, you can bring it to the darim, and it's going to be Lifnei Hashem as well. Okay.